User Acquisition and Measurement in a Privacy-First World by Niels Beenen. Niels is a seasoned business leader with over a decade of experience working with fast-paced startups and technology organizations in sales, online and mobile advertising technology. Yes, I'm really excited about this. Niels, would you like to come in and introduce yourself? And the floor is all yours. Thank you very much for joining us today. We are looking forward to your presentation, my man.
Sure. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. As you can see, I'm joining you from the Monkey Room here in Berlin. Lovely wallpaper here today. I'll get to my introduction in a bit. I just wanted to briefly look at, hey, like what I'll be discussing today. And of course, like feel free to ask any questions throughout this presentation or at the end of the presentation. And the title of this is like boost your UA with a full funnel view. And like what I wanted to look at is, hey, like what is actually that full funnel view? And like to understand that is we need to have a look at the app growth journey and also specifically how we were approaching this at Singular. About myself, like you already like introduced me. So like I've been working in performance marketing for the past 15 years. I was doing this in London before mobile was even a thing. And when I moved to Berlin about 10 years ago, I entered the wild, wild west of affiliate marketing first, and then started working for more serious platforms. But for the past like good 10 years, I've been really working with mobile companies and developers that have been like growing their first mobile games, but also like later on with like some of the larger businesses here in Berlin and EMEA that have been, you know, growing their apps to multi-million and multi-billion-dollar businesses. At Singular, I'm overseeing partnerships. Like I work with the likes of SplitMetrics, but also with the likes of Meta and TikTok to understand, hey, like, you know, what is important in 2023? How do our platforms interact with each other? And how can we then use that to the benefit of our joint customers? On top of that, like I'm a growth consultant for mobile businesses. So people that want some insights into what kind of platforms they should be working with, looking at like some strategies, because I've seen a lot of them over the past years, and really giving them some tips and tricks in growth. A little bit about Singular. So Singular is like the fastest growing MMP in Europe. And what we provide is marketing analytics and measurement solutions for the world's leading brands and app developers. What sets us apart is in recent years, we led the market in providing customers with the tools to navigate a more complex ecosystem. And what I mean by that, it's tools, for example, designed to navigate the post-ATT landscape, because as we know, Apple has shaken up our ecosystem quite a little bit when they rolled out ATT. And Google is about to do the same thing with Google Privacy Sandbox. It's like very interesting times right now to be working in this field. Now, what Singular has been doing since we started is giving clients a complete overview of both upper and lower funnel marketing events. And we do this in one report. And we then allow people to actually look at, hey, like what has been working for me on a channel basis, what has been working on a keyword basis or on a country basis. And we allow them as well to combine different data sets to really go very granular into, hey, what has been working and what has not. How that works for us, and this is like what I meant by like that app growth journey. If we look at like our customers and how they work, like the best way to understand that is like in this wheel that you're seeing here. And this wheel basically starts with the preparation, or if you want, like the setup of the marketing campaigns, right? So that is like your tracking URLs and naming your campaigns and naming your creators, just simply to make sure like everything is working and everything's being reported in a way that you want to have it in the end. Now, the second part is collection. So that is, for example, cost aggregation. How much have I been spending on platform A? How much have I been spending on a particular campaign? How much have I been spending on a particular creatives or keywords or bids? You can all see that here under the name collection. Now, we standardize this as well. What does it mean? On one specific network, you can be looking at a geo, for example, if you're looking at a country performance, or you're looking at a region, or you're looking at a country. These naming conventions can be different, and that can actually mess with your reporting. So what Singular does is we override all of this, and we have a standard word for all of these metrics. So it's going to be country, it's going to be ROI, for example, and that's all done very neatly in that one report that you're going to be using as the end user. Now, Then we go on to measurement. And here we're looking at just attributing like events, right? Like who's been generating specific installs, who's been generating specific in-app events, which can be anything like a purchase or like a micro transaction. We look at SKAN attribution because it works different than on Android, or like we look at cross-device attribution. And then we also look at like frauds, like this is like the protect element of this growth wheel, so to say. There's like your detection and prevention, which means like, hey, you can decide, what do I want to do with suspicious traffic? Do you want to block that outright? Do you want to have a report in which I can then negotiate later on with my customer or with my partner base? I want to get like some of that money back. Or do I actually want to decide, hey, like, you know, this is a very small part of like my operations. I don't want to do anything with that. We give that flexibility to our customers. Then comes data access. So that is, hey, like how and where do I want to see my data? You know, some of our customers want to see it like in our dashboard. Like I said, it's like one report and you see like all of your metrics and like you can do your performance optimization through there. But it can also be that, you know, they have like a third-party solution in their own data warehouses. Then we can export all of that cleansed data that we collect. So both that upper and lower funnel data through marketing ETL to that third-party destination. And it also means like, hey, you can have like a variety of dashboards. You can use like our pivot. So there's different ways that you can access the data and in which you can use it. Now, where it becomes interesting, of course, is that optimization part. So that is like, you know, if I manage to collect all the things are relevant to me, and if I have an overview of everything that I need to do my day-to-day, what does it actually look like? For that, like I want to go to how we look at optimization. And there's like 4 pillars here, really. It's like first is like that delivery, right? Like, you know, your costs, your impressions and your clicks, and like what kind of creatives or keywords that you're running. That is like that upper funnel data. And then we go into the attribution data. It's like who has been generating those installs, or maybe like what kind of website conversions have we been seeing, or like if we have a SKAN campaign, where have the installs been coming from? Third one is performance. So those are registrations, for example, in purchases, ad revenue, in events, SKAN events, because they're different than your other campaigns that you're running. And all of those combined give you those outcomes that you will need to do your optimizations. Like, hey, what is my cost per acquisition? What is my cost per install? What is my ROAS? What's my ROI? But you can also look at like other outcomes such like CTR or CPC or CPM. Like it really varies like per business. Everyone has different objectives. What it looks like in terms of reporting, and here we go a bit more granular because I do want to actually emphasize this in terms of, hey, like that full funnel. You're running creatives and you want to understand like what the ROI of a specific creative is. Now, for you, in order to do that, you need to be doing a few things. You need to have that specific creative. You need to collect all of the costs of all of the networks where that creative is running. Say, for example, you have one video that you're running across ironSource, across Unity, across Liftoff. You want to have that all under one header. You want to have the impressions that you're running. You want to have the costs that you've been having on that specific creative, the installs you've been generating. And if you then know what the outcome of that specific creative was, then you can actually calculate the ROI as well. So then you drill that down, you say, hey, we got that specific creative, what has been doing on Facebook. And then you can start maybe throwing that one out or increasing your bids, many things that you can do. So that is like the app growth journey that we know and that in the past years we have been using. And I want to continue to like, hey, like what has been happening in 2022, because it has been actually like an extremely interesting year. But as we can see, it has also been a very challenging year. And like I threw in a couple of like headlines here that, you know, don't make for very easy reading, but has been the talk of town, like on LinkedIn and in our industry, unfortunately, in the past like week or so. And as I was in the States about 2 weeks ago, I was working with our team there on our strategy for 2023. I listened to a very interesting podcast by The Economist. And you can see the link to that podcast in the bottom left. And it really goes into like some of the challenges that the tech industry is facing. And it also then goes into how those are impacting platforms that rely on advertising dollars as their primary business model. And surprise, surprise, like a lot of the people, a lot of the partners that we're talking about in this presentation that we are using for our UA are exactly those partners, right? Now, the podcast distinguishes between so-called movers and shapers and creepers. And creepers, I'll get to them, but I think it already makes sense like what they might be. But looking at like the movers and shakers, like, we all have our like, indexes, like Singular has its ROI index in which we say, hey, who are the best partners in terms of where you want to spend your advertising dollars, and like who can actually generate like the most installs for you, right? So those are the kind of rankings. And what we saw for quite a long time is a duopoly. So that's like Facebook and Google holding the vast majority of ad budgets, and that was not only for brand but also like for performance marketers. And if you would ask like any performance marketer, like, hey, like, if you want to start a campaign or like if you want to scale, these would be like the two partners that you would predominantly going to, then followed by, some other people like within the ecosystem, but like it's, quite a top heavy lift. And what we see in 2022, and something that I heard Feature mention as well before, is that, that landscape has become much more varied in terms of players. Like, we talk about Apple search ads, for example. Yeah, they benefited massively from ATT. But they really increased their share of voice, but also like players like TikTok, for example. What we're seeing is this diversification and fragmentation of an ecosystem. And we also see other channels pop up, which can be connected TV, for example, but it can also be like influencer marketing, to name just a few. Now, going back to like, the dominant partners here, like there's two liabilities. One of them, it's like not directly related to user privacy or to ATT. It is simply like, hey, like you can copy a business model quite successfully and eat into an existing user base, or actually prevent a specific user base from going to like one of your competitors. Looking at social platforms, for example, like look at TikTok. Like TikTok is a prime example. It is a social network. It has a product that is very similar to its competition, but it has been very popular with a younger crowd. And as a result, and also maybe with a slightly different format, they've really been building a critical mass here. And like, if you now ask if you want to especially target, like I say, a younger audience, TikTok is probably a very good place to start. And, some of the more established and mature social networks will probably come second here. And this comes to the point of like the creepers and like, why they are so impacted by ATT, is that creepers, they basically call those platforms that rely very much on user level data, and that they can sell at very, very high rates, and that thereby, pushes their revenue. Now, that as a result of ATT or SKAN Disruption, is a business model that has really come under pressure. And I think a lot of that, what we're seeing right now, is a fallout of what we've been experiencing in 2022. Let me go on to that SKAN disruption, and like, so we like understand, what has been going on, but also like, some of the solutions maybe to these problems. First of all, like I just want to reiterate like the definition of SKAN. So it's a framework created by Apple for privacy preserving mobile app install attribution. That's a lot of words. It aims to help measure conversion rates of app install campaigns without compromising users' identity. So the bottom line is the IDFA is no longer being used. Now, SKAN offers a few challenges when you want to grow your app on iOS. First of all, and here I'm really addressing many of the SMBs or people that don't have a large BI or engineering resource, people that are new to UA, it is the data collection itself. You're going to be tasked with collecting different types of postbacks, for example, and this really requires like extra resources. And second is the enriching of raw SKAN data. By default, SKAN data must be enriched for you to make it readable for you to be able to use it. And without enriching SKAN data, you don't have a readable campaigning, for example. And the third is like decoding conversion values. In SKAN, conversion values are reported as numerical bits, and these need to be decoded for you to have an event name. To make this even a bit more complicated, but not necessarily bad for marketeers, In SKAN 4.0, one of the updates that Apple made has been to add 2 additional conversion values on top of the fine conversion value that we're talking about now. So that is the one that you're optimizing most on. That is like your revenue, for example, or your funnel. Apple has been adding 2 coarse conversion models. And by coarse, we mean it is a conversion model that gives you 3 possible indicators of performance. One is good, the other one is meh, and the other one can be bad. So that has been like added on top of already like what you need to be importing and what you need to be decoding. And then lastly, and this is really like the most important one, and like where still today we see a lot of customers that come away struggling with, it is data censorship. And Apple is censoring about 20% of SKAN data. They do that because they don't want you to be able, when campaigns have acquired, they don't want to link any performance back to any specific device. And this is why they do this specific censorship. So it means that if you were to look at like your campaign performance, like with a naked eye, you would go like, hey, like there's something wrong with my revenue, for example, like these campaigns are really underperforming. But in essence, actually, like you just don't get like, you know, the data that you need to actually see the true performance of your campaigns. And what that actually then requires is that you have advanced analytics. So you can model those 20% of those missing conversions, but that is also something that you would then need to do, either you yourself, the UA manager, or someone in your BI team, or you need to use a solution that actually does this out of the box. If you look at SKAN, so we had a webinar with Rover that was visited by 2,000 performance marketeers. So like it's a very, very large crowd. We asked them about the SKAN consensus, and this webinar was in April this year. So it is a couple of months ago. So like these figures may be a little bit outdated, but I think they do give you a good indicator of like, hey, what is the state of the landscape in 2022? And 9% of these people said, hey, SKAN was actually a success for them. So like, you know, it's good, which means that like the vast majority of UA managers, performance marketeers, say there is like room to improve there. And there's like about half of them that said, hey, there's like a lot of work to do. So it actually shows you that, you know, the impact on the day-to-day of UA managers, performance marketeers, and how that's being felt by the networks and the partners is massive. And this will continue in 2023. Then moving on to opt-in rates, like, you know, there's a lot of noise in the market, but like, hey, like, you know, throughout time, will not more users opt in? So you can actually then use your IDFA and then you can actually circumvent like SKAN. Not really. Like we do see that opt-in rates hover about 25%. So it does mean that like, you know, 3 out of 4 users that you're trying to reach on iOS, you're going to have to pass through SKAN. So that is actually huge here. What else we know? We do know that iOS spend was down. It is rebounding now. We do see that as well with customers that have managed to make SKAN work. The day, you know, when they have the performance indicators, when there's no more disruption into their day-to-day, they can like, you know, go back to the levels that they used to be spending at, but also increase. We saw that like iOS ROI was down as well. Again, here we see that with the right tools in place, you can make some dramatic improvements into your campaign performance. And we also saw that like Android UA costs became higher post ATT, but also like this has leveled out a little bit. So there are like, you know, the effects that we saw in the immediate aftermath, but these have been subsiding in recent times. On SKAN, if you look at what we just discussed, hey, like what are these like problems that we're looking to face? What I want to focus on here before we dive into the next topic, because I know that we're a bit pressed on time.
Niels, my sincere apologies. We are, unfortunately, as you mentioned there, running behind timeline. Niels, thank you very, very much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. By the way, presentation looks great. It's super.
So here you go, guys. Here's my email. If you want to reach me on LinkedIn, you can do that here as well.
Thank you, Niels. Appreciate it. We're very grateful to have you.